Astronomy in Reverse by Pansley. Chapter 7. And the World is Washing.
Tighten your grip more. If you swing too loose, the bat will fall right out of your hands.
Peter listens, repositioning his hands on the grip, looking back and forth between the handle and Bucky as the man waits to pitch. Bucky idly tosses the ball up and down with one hand as he instructs Peter into the right position, coaching his stance.
Relax your shoulders,
Bucky says, catching the ball again.
You won't be able to swing very wide if you're all hunched up like that.
Maybe that's a good thing, Peter grimaces, glancing behind Bucky at the rest of the park, filled with people enjoying the warmth and sunshine just as they are. I feel like I'm holding a rocket launcher. What if I hit somebody? Bucky smiles, crouching into his own stance to prepare to pitch.
You won't, because you're going to concentrate on controlling your strength and keeping the ball in the field. Right.
Right, Peter says, sounding anything but confident.
You could do it,
Bucky assures, winding up the throw. Peter braces himself, bat at the ready, and Bucky focuses on pitching it to him gently at the barrel height of the bat. The kid swings, and the familiar wooden clap of the bat hitting the ball resonates between them. Peter raises his hand to shield his eyes from the sun as he stares out into the field, searching for the ball. Oh crap, where did it go? Didn't it leave the park?
Not quite,
says Bucky, biting his lip to stifle a laugh as he gestures to the ground 2 feet in front of Peter.
I think you were concentrating a little too much, pal.
Peter gapes down at the ball incredulously, then gives Bucky a disbelieving, pouting frown that does make the man laugh out loud this time. Bucky steps forward and picks up the ball, giving Peter a comforting pat on the shoulder as he says,
It just takes practice, kid. There's nothing wrong with holding back, but learning to control how much of your strength you're using at any given time will come in handy, trust me.
So do you think I'm ready for my Yankees audition?
With a swing like that? Yeah, actually.
Bucky grins preemptively.
I'm sure you'll ace it.
Peter growls, covering his face with his hands like Bucky's joke caused him tangible physical pain. Bucky laughs again, ushering Peter back into place as he steps back to prepare for another pitch.
Just work your way up,
Bucky tells him as he winds up another throw.
Swing the bat just a little harder this time, and a little harder the next time, until you find the right amount of force to get some distance without breaking anything. We'll worry about accuracy and trajectory later.
Got it! Peter nods, and this time when he hits the ball, it actually does get sent flying. Not exactly home run material, but at least Bucky has to actually move to go and pick it up again. Hey, Peter starts hesitantly, waiting patiently until Bucky walks back over with the ball. So, I only have 2 exams left until school is over, and then, next week is the graduation ceremony, and they do this awards thing where they give medals to the honor students from every grade, and apparently I'm going to get 2 for having top marks in both my grade and the school overall, so... Peter looks up at him shyly, face red with embarrassment or nervousness, or both. I was wondering if you'd come to the ceremony? Bucky stops, ball in hand, as he gazes down at Peter in surprise. The kid's cheeks reddened further the longer Bucky stares at him, until Bucky snaps out of it with a slight shake of his head, frowning as he says, What are you saying, kid? Of course I'll be there. Peter blinks, eyes widening, with his own surprise as he blurts, You! Really? You don't mind?
You know I don't really like crowds,
Bucky admits with a slight shrug.
But this is a special occasion. You've worked really hard, Peter. You deserve to get recognized for that.
He hands Peter the ball, patting the top of the boy's head once his hands are free.
Besides, someone's got to be there to scare off all those creepy rich parents who are probably going to stand there throwing money at you like that will somehow make their own dumbass kids smarter.
Peter laughs, leaning into Bucky's side with his ball and bat in hand as Bucky puts an arm around his shoulder, leading him out of the park and back towards their apartment. Are you sure your boss won't mind? I mean, it's during the day, so... Bucky ups a small laugh.
I thought Frank's wife was chatty, but ever since I told him about you, guy doesn't shut up about it. I don't think he totally believes that you actually exist, so if I told him I needed the afternoon off for your graduation, I think he'd be thrilled.
The kid giggles again, his eyes lighting up brilliantly beneath the sunshine as he says, Hey, I can finally show you my school! Our robotics lab is really awesome. I can show you the prosthetics display we have.
Just as long as you don't try and add me to it.
Bucky jokes, dropping his hand from Peter's shoulder and giving him an affectionate flick to the back of his head instead. True, Bucky's right. Frank doesn't mind at all when he asks for the afternoon off to attend Peter's award ceremony.
Go tell him congratulations for me,
His boss says as Bucky dons his sweater to leave.
I told him to stop by sometime if he's got nothing to do during the day. I want to meet him.
I can tell, Bucky internally laments, giving his boss a polite nod as he says,
I'll let him know. See you tomorrow.
Frank says his goodbyes as Bucky leaves, making the journey to Peter's school in record time, unable to slow his pace as his nerves and uncertainty flare up. He knows a big affluent high school graduation isn't exactly the likeliest place for him to run into trouble, but still, knowing he'll be surrounded by strangers on all sides sets him on edge, as it always does. The ceremony is held in the auditorium, packed with parents, students, and faculty alike, all crowding around the large stage that takes up most of the gymnasium floor as the bleachers are filled wall to wall with parents holding pamphlets. Bucky chooses the corner closest to the exits to stand in, his back to the wall so he can survey the crowd before him, more for peace of mind than anything. The last thing he wants is for an unexpected, harmless surprise to trigger his shaky nerves and ruin Peter's big day. He positions himself so that there's no way someone could sneak up on him, while still ensuring he can see the stage, and then waits. Presenters come and go as the ceremony progresses. The principal, the guest speaker, the student body representative, all giving samey, feel-good speeches that earn polite scattered applause among the audience. Finally, a woman takes the microphone and begins to announce the awards for the honor roll students, and of course, because Peter is incredible and Bucky is incredibly unlucky, the top award is saved for last. He is pleasantly surprised, though, when halfway through announcing the freshman awards, Ned's name is called, and the boy proudly walks across the stage, waving the medal hanging around his neck to his family waiting for him at the bottom of the ramp. Bucky claps for him, smiling, but an odd feeling of dread swirls inside his stomach as he watches Ned step onto the gymnasium floor and gets swarmed by his adoring family, hugging and praising him as cameras flash incessantly all around them, Ned beaming as he's cherished for every angle without any hint of doubt. The kid deserves it, of course he does, and Bucky is glad to see the kind of loving environment that surrounds Ned, but his heart also aches painfully at the sight, knowing that Peter deserves that too, and that Bucky can't give it to him. It won't be the same, Peter stepping off that stage to find only Bucky waiting for him. No gifts, no photos, no downpour of praise. Nothing that every single other kid here will get. Not all of them as deserving of it as Ned. None of them as deserving of it as Peter. Bucky swallows the indignation in his throat as he slowly makes his way down the aisle of the bleachers, spying Peter off to the side of the stage, preparing to step onto the platform and receive his awards. Bucky stops several feet from the bottom of the ramp, out of the eyes of all the cameras pointed to it, and waits as the announcer beams and sings Peter's praises admiringly, grinning as she recounts what a pleasure he is to have in class, how he has earned these awards of excellence with the highest honors. To Bucky's shock and satisfaction, the woman's speech is actually met with enthusiastic applause from behind him, and even from some of the students in front of him, all clapping as loudly and as proudly as he is as Peter walks across the stage to receive both of his medals, blushing furiously as both the announcer and the principal warmly congratulate him. A hopelessly wide grin spreads across Bucky's face as Peter starts descending the ramp and sees him, the kids' eyes lighting up the way they always do for him when he spots Bucky in the crowd. Peter grins back, his tie endearingly crooked, tangled in the straps of his medals as he bounds down the ramp, headed straight for Bucky. But before he can do so much as put one foot on the gymnasium floor, Peter is surrounded by people on all sides, all taking at once, trying to shake his hand, take his picture, shove business cards at him with unchecked enthusiasm. Bucky loses sight of him behind the wall of determined strangers, parents most likely, who have Peter boxed in against the bottom of the stage like he's a celebrity. Buggy starts moving forward with the intent of carving his way through the obnoxious mob that has his kid cornered when another camera flash in front of him halts him in his tracks. He freezes, watching as photographers move closer, snapping photos of everything surrounding Peter to try and get the best shot. The group of adults finally give him a little room as Peter maneuvers through them, searching for Bucky, and a stab of shame hits the man right in the gut. Peter looks overwhelmed, face flushed, and senses undoubtedly inundated by all the commotion around him. He looks very different from the boy who was smiling at him only minutes ago, and Bucky grits his teeth, cursing himself for letting Peter get bombarded like that just because he was too unnerved to step in front of a flashing camera. Relief floods the kid's face when he sees him again, and Bucky stays rooted in his shame-filled corner as Peter beelines for him, effectively dodging another attempt to steal his attention with a polite, slightly frantic, "Oh, I'm sorry, my dad's waiting for me," as he ducks underneath another hand, handing him a business card. Bucky releases a tense breath when the cameras don't follow Peter over to him, and he takes his hands out of his pockets and opens his arm wide as Peter surges forward into them, wrapping his own around Bucky's center and squeezing him, his frantic heartbeat thudding wildly against Bucky's abdomen.
"I'm so proud of you,"
he says as he holds the boy tighter, feeling his slight form sag gratefully into his chest, the stress leaving his small body as Bucky wraps him securely in his arms.
"You did great, Peter. I'm so damn proud."
Peter's face is smushed against his chest, so when he replies, the words come out as a muffled mess that he's pretty sure are supposed to be, "Thanks, Bucky," before Peter pulls back, happy and exhausted, and finally looking a little calmer. Bucky brushes a lock of curls out of the boy's eyes and asks,
"What do you want to do? Want to hang around here for a bit and say hi to your friends? Or we could take that tour of the school like you wanted. Up to you, kiddo."
"Actually," Peter starts, his voice quiet and a little strained, "can we maybe save the tour for next time? This is all kind of a little much." He pulls back, rests his hands over his stomach, his face still a little pink. "Plus, I'm hungry." Smiling, Bucky ruffles his hair and steers both of them towards the doors without a drop of hesitation.
"Whatever you say, kid. Want to stop by Delmar's, head home, and watch Star Wars?"
"Yes!" Peter grins, the metals around his neck shining in the sunlight as they step outside, the same bright golden light reflecting in his eyes. The first week of Peter's summer vacation goes by incredibly fast. Bucky finds that with nothing to occupy him during the day, Peter is excessively hyperactive and talkative when Bucky gets home. He goes on longer patrols as Spider-Man, stays out for the better part of the entire day sometimes, but that's still not enough to burn all of his pent-up energy, so Bucky finds himself training the kid much more vigorously than he was previously. He spends hours making the kid run, sometimes raising him, sometimes just forcing him to build endurance. They spar for hours, Bucky coaching Peter on how to disarm and incapacitate an opponent twice his size, and when Peter shows promise in hand-to-hand combat, he shines most brightly in the training they do with his webs.
"Ready?"
Bucky asks, baseball in hand, as Peter lifts the bat. The wind is cool and sharp up on the building's roof, several stories high in the air, the heat of early summer doing nothing to keep them warm now that the sun is set. Peter tinkers with his web shooter slightly, then readies the bat as he nods at Bucky. "Ready!" Bucky aims, building up a substantial amount of force in his arm before he throws the ball. It hurls toward Peter, who hits it with a clean and easy ping, sending it flying across the rooftop and above the road below.
"Come on, you can do it,"
Bucky says encouragingly as Peter takes off running, his mask and goggles pulled over his face as he lifts his wrists and fires rapidly at the ball. He has to swing to the building beside the one they're on to get close enough to successfully shoot the ball with his webs, and then he lands on the side of the building across the road and begins to scale up it, ball securely in hand, as he climbs the side of the structure all the way to the top. He swings again to return to the building Bucky is waiting on, flipping and landing gracefully in front of him, holding the ball out to him with a grin that Bucky can discern even from under his mask. "That was a close one," Peter says as Bucky takes the ball. "I'm getting faster, though. It didn't even get halfway to the street."
"I saw,"
Bucky praises with a small smile. Peter pulls off his mask, grinning. "Still think I have a shot at making Rookie of the Year?"
"If you play for the Red Sox, maybe."
The kid laughs, walking back over to where he left his bat. They do the same exercise several more times, each time Peter hitting the ball harder and sending it farther and farther to try and see if he can catch it with his webs before it hits the ground or another building. He'll never say it out loud, but Bucky can't help but feel like he's playing fetch with a puppy to try and wear it out after it's been cooped up indoors all day. Especially because it takes hours of this exercise for Peter to successfully burn off all his energy, his web shooters completely drained of fluid by the time he sleepily smiles and says, "I'm getting kind of tired," when he brings the ball back for what feels like the 1,000th time.
"We've been at this for hours, kid,"
says Bucky agreeably, sticking the ball into his pocket and then bending over to grab the bat while Peter changes into his normal clothes.
"Let's get you home and into bed. I have to be up early tomorrow for work."
"That Honda still giving you trouble?" Peter asks as he pulls on his sweater, lifting his backpack onto his shoulder as he jogs to catch up with Bucky, already heading for the stairs.
"Nah,"
Bucky says as they leave the rooftop.
Got that done, but I'm working on sort of a pet project at the moment. Frank brought in an old Yamaha that I'm fixing up on the side.
Peter's face scrunches up in thought.
What kind of car is that?
Chuckling, Buggy shakes his head slightly as he says,
Not a car, kid. It's a bike.
The kid's face lights up, his eyes going wide and bright as he excitedly exclaims, "Hey, you wanted one of those! Is Mr. Descartes going to sell it when you're done fixing it?"
It might,
he says as they leave the building, stepping out onto the much warmer sidewalk.
It might not be worth much, though, even when I get it roadworthy. It was a scrapyard salvage.
"I want to see!" says Peter, still bubbling with excitement. "You said you'd teach me how to drive one someday, right? Can I come by and look at it?"
Ride, not drive.
Bucky corrects, smiling exasperatedly.
Sure, I don't see why not. Frank keeps breathing down my neck about mating you anyway.
Yay! Peter cheers, no longer sounding tired in the slightest. Maybe he should have made him do a few laps before they left the roof. "Can I come by tomorrow?"
I'll believe it before you get up,
Bucky says, shooting Peter a look, teasing him for how late he's been sleeping in ever since summer break started.
But when you're up at a sure, I'll be in the shop all day.
"Okay," Peter says, burying his face in the crook of his elbow to stifle a large yawn, his burst of energy apparently over with him for now. Buggy smiles, wraps an arm around the boy's shoulders, pulls him in close.
"Come on, kid,"
he says as they head down the street together.
"Let's get you home." "So what time is your boss showing up?"
Frank asks in his deep, gruff voice from somewhere behind Bucky, who is lying on his back on an old rickety creeper, mostly hidden beneath a jacked-up Kia. The man's voice echoes against the concrete floor throughout the shop, booming even though Buggy's pretty sure he's on the other side of the room.
"Any time now,"
Bucky says, rolling out from under the vehicle and squinting at the bright shop lights hit him full in the face.
I told him to just swing by when he gets up, but he's probably sleeping in.
Frank grunts, giving him an unimpressed look as he checks his watch.
"It's noon already. You're on a little ship bounce."
"He's on vacation," he says defensively, cleaning the black grease off his hands with the rag that's looped through his belt strap.
"And even when he's not, I don't need to run a tight ship. Nobody works harder than my kid."
Frank shoots him a look that clearly says, "I'll be the judge of that," before grabbing the file he came in for from the cabinet and exiting to the door to the dealership. Bucky gives his head a slight shake with a small, tired smile before pulling out his crappy cell phone and confirming that it is, indeed, already noon. Bucky frowns, but he isn't exactly worried. After all, he did tell the kid to stop by whenever, telling him he would be at the shop all day. Maybe Peter decided to do his patrol first, or more likely, he got sidetracked on the way here by a group of dog walkers, and is going to show up completely disheveled and covered in hair, and Buggy will have to hose him off before he lets his judgmental boss meet him. The thought makes Buggy have a small laugh, and he goes back to work while only half paying attention to the time creeping by. The afternoon drags on slowly as he keeps stealing glances at his phone, wondering where Peter is. If he got caught up in trouble or most likely made some new animal friend somewhere and completely lost track of time. Bucky stays calm and unworried until 3 p.m. hits, and then the anxiety festers hot and disruptive in the pit of his stomach. Sighing, Bucky pulls out his cell phone again and quickly punches in Peter's number. There's only a couple of hours until the shift is over, and Peter should have been here by now. And even if the boy is simply planning to come at the end of the day instead, touching base with him won't hurt. At least Bucky will be able to finish the rest of his day with a clear head and a calm stomach. But the phone just rings and rings and rings. Bucky grips the device tightly in his hand, his anxiety raging. Peter knows better than to turn his cell phone off. He knows there might come a time when Bucky needs to get a hold of him instantly. Why isn't he answering? Maybe he's on the train, reasons the logical part of his brain. Hopefully. Maybe it's loud and crowded and he can't hear it vibrating in his pocket. But no, that doesn't make sense. Even if Peter was completely overwhelmed by other sounds around him, he would still feel the phone on his person, feel the vibrations through his clothing. There's no way he wouldn't feel it ringing. Which means he can't answer it. Bucky grits his teeth, forcing himself to take a deep breath and pocket his phone. He can't keep doing this every time Peter is lost. There are bound to be times when he can't find or get a hold of the kid. How many times has it happened already in the few months they've been living together? And Peter's always been fine every single time. This time will be no different. He forces himself to continue working, head down and body tense, until only half an hour remains of his shift, and then Bucky gives up, throwing the rag off his belt and making a break for the door. Peter should have been here by now. He should have called to say something came up. Unless he couldn't. Hands clenched into tight fists, Bucky makes it halfway across the room to the door when abruptly it opens. Sharon, Frank's wife, steps through and grins widely at Bucky, her face bright and cheerful. "Jim, darling," she calls in a sing-song voice, stepping aside and holding the door open. "Your son is here." The tension turns to lead inside Bucky's body, weighing him down as all of his muscles grow heavy from the strain leaving them. Peter peeks his head in, shyly, but smiles widely when their eyes meet, stepping through the doorway and heading straight for him. Bucky has half a mind to demand, "Where the hell have you been?" When the question catches in his throat, his mind blanking for a moment at the sight of Peter's outfit. The kid is wearing his only pair of jeans that don't have frayed edges or faded colors. His white button-down shirt and the deep blue sweater pulled over it are perfectly straight, not hanging off him haphazardly like his clothing usually does. The sleeves rolled up to his forearms to give the whole thing a spiffier, cleaner look. His sneakers are wider than usual, as though he washed them. It's such a stark contrast from how he normally dresses. Old ripped-up jeans and his usual red baggy hoodie, that Bucky loses his train of thought for a moment. The only other time he's seen Peter dressed up was for his award ceremony last week. Other than that, the kid never seemed to really care about his appearance, and while the change isn't necessarily a bad one, Bucky is struck speechless by the sight of his kid looking so grown up. "Hey!" Peter greets, still grinning as he stops in front of Bucky. "Guess what?" From the corner of his eye, Bucky sees Frank join his wife at the door, watching them, but he can't take his gaze away from the bizarre sight of Peter's outfit as he numbly asks, "What?" Peter's grin stretches even wider, his cheeks reddening slightly. "I got a job!" If Bucky thought he was speechless a moment ago, the words that just left Peter's mouth have him utterly blindsided. "You what?" Peter gestures down at himself, at his neat, clean clothes, then smiles up at Bucky again. "Yeah, well, I thought being at home all day would kind of drive me crazy, so I got dressed up and went to Mr. Delmar's and asked if he needed any help with the store over the summer. It's only part-time, but he said yes." His eyes light up with excitement and pride, his cheeks still tinted pink. "So I'm going to be helping him for a few hours in the evenings and during the days on the weekends, Is that okay?" Snapping back to reality, Bucky shakes off the shock and immediately returns the kid's smile, stepping forward and pulling him into a short hug. "Of course, kid. I'm proud of you. Is this why you didn't answer your phone?" Peter's face pales a little as he pulls back, his eyes widening. "Oh, crap! I'm sorry!" He pulls his cell phone out of his back pocket, opening it and pressing several buttons as he said, "I put it on silent while I was talking to Mr. Delmar because I wanted to be polite, and then I totally forgot to turn it back up. Sorry." "That's okay," Bucky says with a small relieved sigh, giving the boy's shoulder a light pat. "Just try and remember next time, yeah? You know how I get when I don't know where you are." "Yeah." Peter nods, eyes downcast and remorseful. "Sorry, but..." he starts to say, and then his eyes dart over to where Frank and Sharon are standing so quickly that Bucky almost misses it, and he catches himself at the last second. "Dad?" "That's all right," Bucky says, forcing the words to sound normal, natural, though his chest has got painfully tight, and hearing Peter call him Dad for the very first time. "Hey, come on, cheer up. Your first job." "Oh, you just turned 15, isn't that right?" Frank says, walking over to them as he gives Peter an approving nod. "That's some good work ethic, son. You take after your dad, huh?" Bucky isn't sure whose face goes redder, his or Peter's. But the kid manages to pull himself together and politely says, "Thanks, Mr. Descartes," as he smiles sheepishly. "I hope I do." Bucky can't help the fond form expression he knows crosses his face at that. God, his kid is the cutest thing in the world. He's grateful Peter isn't looking at him and can't see the undoubtedly sappy look on his face, but then Bucky glances up and sees Sharon grinning at him knowingly, and he purses his lips and looks away in embarrassment. So Sharon takes pity on him and says, "Why don't you show him around, Jim?" He says, caught off guard, but quickly regaining composure. "Right. Come on, kid, I'll give you the grand tour." "Mr. Descartes already showed me the dealership," Peter says as he follows him out of the shop into the medium-sized wreckage lot behind the building. Buggy shows him all the cars he's been rebuilding, the newest ones towed in from the salvage yard, and then finally the skinny white Yamaha he hid beneath an old blue tarp. "Wow!" Peter says, running his hand over the handlebars. "It's kind of smaller than I expected."
That's a thinner model,
Buggy says, steadying the bike off its kickstand as Peter throws his leg over the seat.
Perfect size for you to learn on, actually.
Peter gets comfortable on the bike, shifting his weight slightly as he pretends to steer the engineless motorcycle. "Will you teach me someday?"
"Someday,"
Bucky assures, letting go so Peter can try and balance the bike upright by himself.
"When do you start working with Delmar?"
"Tomorrow," Peter says as he dismounts the bike. I'll be gone by the time you get home from work." Bucky nods, throwing the tarp back over the bike after Peter sets it on its kickstand again.
"You had better get an employee discount."
Peter laughs, wrapping his arm around Bucky's side as the man takes him by the shoulder and steers him back through the shop.
"You introduced yourself to Frank and his wife, yeah?"
"Yeah," says Peter, nodding. "They're really nice." His face suddenly goes a deep shade of red all the way to the tips of his ears, hidden beneath his curls. "Miss Descoteres got really excited when I asked for you. I think you were right. They totally didn't think I actually existed."
"What did I tell you?"
Bucky says, scowling slightly, perfectly picturing the way Sharon probably squealed and said something horribly humiliating like, "Oh, you must be Jim's baby," to the absolute embarrassment of both of them.
"I'm surprised they haven't asked for a copy of your birth certificate yet."
Giggling, Peter waits patiently as Bucky cleans up his work area and pulls his sweater on so they can go home. They poke their heads into the dealership to wish Frank and Sharon a good night, and the woman smiles warmly and pats Peter's shoulder as she invites him to come back and visit any time. Buggy's marginally surprised when he looks up and sees Frank nodding, agreeing with his wife. After their polite goodbyes, the two start heading home, Peter instantly rambling about how excited he is for his first day at his first job. Buggy is quiet and listens patiently, waiting for an appropriate break in Peter's spiel to ask,
"What time does he want you there until?"
"Oh," Peter says, thinking it over. "I think he said until 7 or so." Nodding, Bucky ruffles the kid's hair and says,
"How about I pick you up and take you out to celebrate?"
Peter's eyes light up, and then a playful, slightly mischievous smile crosses his face as he says, "But we always go to Del Mar's to celebrate." Bucky smiles, affectionately flicking the back of Peter's head.
"Make us dinner to take out then. I'll take you anywhere you want to go after."
"Can we—" Peter starts shyly, his smile small and hopeful. "Can we maybe head to the park then and play catch?" Bucky raises an eyebrow at him, but before he can say anything, Peter adds, Not training catch, real catch."
"Sure, kid. I got you those mitts for a reason,"
he says as he pats Peter's head again fondly.
"Dinner and then catch in the park. Sounds great to me."
"Yeah," Peter says, grinning. "Me too." Sure enough, when Buggy walks into Del Mar's bodega the next night, he finds Peter behind the counter, helping another employee stock the beverage display. The boy looks up as the bell chimes above the door and grins when he sees him, that familiar "I'm so happy to see you" smile that Buggy is simultaneously not used to and not sure he could live without at this point. Peter says his goodbyes to Delmar and his new co-workers while Bucky orders their dinner, and then they're on their way to the park. Peter's mouth going a mile a minute as he joyfully recounts his first day of work, even though it was only 4 hours. Buggy smiles as he listens, the kid's enthusiasm contagious as Peter babbles and bolsters about how much he's looking forward to this new and exciting experience. "Mr. Delmar said the only thing he isn't going to train me on is actually making the sandwiches," Peter says with a small shrug. "I'm pretty sure it's because I don't have any, kitchen credentials or anything, but he said if he gave me the recipes to his sandwiches, he'd lose his best Abruptly, Peter stops dead in his tracks, and Buggy turns around curiously, a joke about Peter being grateful that Delmar will never have to witness his lack of cooking skill still clinging to his lips. But it evaporates when he notices the wildly panicked look on the boy's face.
"Pete,"
Bucky asks cautiously, reaching a hand out for the boy's shoulder.
"Hey, Peter, what's wrong?"
Suddenly, the shrill, desperate honking of a vehicle barreling down the highway beside them interrupts Bucky and startles them both, and Peter dashes into the alleyway next to them and ducks behind a dumpster as he starts furiously throwing on his Spider-Man uniform.
Peter,
Bucky starts advancing on the kid, who runs past him, throwing his backpack and their bag of sandwiches onto the alley floor as he runs after the out-of-control vehicle with a loud and frantic, "I have to help!"
"Peter!"
Bucky calls, but he's too late. Peter webs himself up into the air and starts racing down the highway, swinging desperately after the runaway vehicle. "Crap!" Bucky curses, taking off running after the boy, dodging around shocked spectators, all staring wide-eyed as the vehicle, a city bus of all things, heads straight for a crowded, busy intersection going way too fast, the horn blaring urgently as the bus gains speed, never slowing down even though its brake lights are on. Bucky runs behind Peter, who swings as fast as he can to get in front of the bus. To Bucky's horror, he can't do anything but watch as Peter lands on the road in front of the careening vehicle, between it and another car stuck in the intersection, and braces himself as best he can to be hit by the massive contraption full force. It's as if time slows down for Buggy in that moment. He isn't fast enough to get there, isn't fast enough to stop it or push Peter out of the way, as he lifts his hands and catches the bus that hits him head on, pushing him back several feet from the force of it, effectively pinning him between itself and the car behind him, which doesn't even rock from the impact. Peter stopping it just in time. Bucky can see Peter's chest heaving from the effort, and the boy flattens both of his hands on the grill of the bus and pushes, creating enough room that he can wriggle out from between it and the car, to the uproarious applause of every pedestrian on all four corners of the intersection. The sound is like static to Bucky's ears, though, and he pushes past every single person standing between him and his kid, not caring at all how much strength is behind each desperate shove, as he beelines straight for the boy still gasping for breath in the middle of the road.
"Kid,"
Bucky calls desperately, not recognizing the panicked sound of his own voice as he takes Peter by the shoulders, barely restraining himself from ripping the mask off his face, needing to see him, see that he's okay.
"Kid, hey, look at me. Are you all right?"
Peter looks up, nodding once, dazed, still too out of breath to speak. Bucky's hands tighten painfully around his shoulders. He wants to scream, wants to bare his teeth and demand to know what the kid was thinking, if he had any reservations whatsoever about jumping in front of a runaway bus! But a slight tremble in the kid's frame diffuses some of his terrified anger, and Bucky heaves a somewhat relieved sigh and pulls the kid hard against his chest, wrapping his arms around Peter's shoulders and squeezing tightly, just to feel his heart still beating inside that small torso, hammering wildly against Bucky's own. Peter's shaking hands come up and fist in Bucky's jacket, hugging him back, and it's then that Bucky hears the sea of commotion all around them, the talking, the opening and shutting of car doors, the sirens in the distance that are steadily growing louder. Bucky glances around them and finds the whole world watching, every single pedestrian staring at them with wide, round eyes, almost all of them holding up their phones pointed directly at them. Bucky freezes under what feels like 1,000 gazes, and Peter chooses that moment to look up, sees the crowd of people all watching them with their phones raised too, and he flinches backward out of Bucky's arms, vaulting over the car behind him and then shooting a web as high as he can to swing up off the street and onto a roof, and then he's gone. The people all turn in the direction Peter went, pointing their phones and their cameras after him, and Bucky swallows thickly and takes advantage of the opportunity to backtrack to the alley where Peter left his bag, his arms and legs feeling numb as he grabs their belongings and begins the long walk home alone.